What's up, y'all? My name is Andre, and welcome to First 5, the show where I play a brand new game for the very first time and give you guys my honest first impressions of its first 5 hours. Today, we're going to be taking a look at my most anticipated game of 2025, a game that, at the time of recording, just came out 2 days ago, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. If you're not familiar with what this game's about, it's time to lock in before you start missing out, because this might just be my new favorite game. But before we jump right into it, I want to go over some key important details first. Clair Obscur is a turn-based RPG developed by Sandfall Interactive, a brand new dev studio based in France. It's also published by Kepler Interactive. Anyway, it's important to note that this is Sandfall Interactive's very first game, and what impressed me right off the bat is the $50 MSRP. And if you bought the game on Steam during release week like I did, you even got a 10% discount.
Nice.
In a world where greedy companies are jacking up video game prices left and right, from the new $70 standard asking price for your typical AAA game, to even Nintendo's egregious $90 bullshit pricing. Like, they might as well ask us to bend over at this point because of how hard they're fucking us over. It's great that there are still companies that prioritize making their games as affordable as they can be, so that people can experience them without having to choose between leisure and a week's worth of groceries. So thank you, Clair Obscur, for being different. Way to make a great first impression, and we haven't even started playing the game yet. So let's go ahead and press the play button and see what makes this Game of the Year material. When I loaded up the game for the very first time, it went through the usual. Company logo, title art, very cool stuff. But then she started singing. That intro title screen music slaps, bro. It had no business being this good right off the bat. I straight up just sat there, listening to the entire thing. I don't even speak French, but parlez-vous français I might have to start learning. And I also want to say that I'm pretty musically inept, and usually the music is the last thing that I notice when I'm playing a game, but it's the complete opposite experience for me in Clair Obscur. What can I say? The music is absolutely striking, and it does an amazing job in setting the tone and adding to the overall vibe of this fantastical new world that we're exploring for the first time. I also really like the vocalist that's featured on a lot of the tracks. And finally, there's a surprising amount of variety in the OST, even this early into the game, especially in the battle music. But as much as I want to rave about the OST, let's talk about my favorite thing about Clair Obscur, the gameplay. To start, let me give you a hot take. Nothing about Clair Obscur's gameplay is unique. In fact, its core gameplay loop is a mishmash of mechanics we've seen countless times in the past, albeit in different games. If you really think about it, and it's honestly quite obvious, Clair Obscur is basically Persona 5 with a Parry Button, minus all the weeb shit. That's it.
For real?
But if that's the case, then why am I so fucking obsessed with this game? And why do I think that this might just be the game that revolutionizes turn-based RPGs forever? Now, before you get upset at me, I know they added more than just a parry button. There's even a dodge button, a jump button, and QuickTime event buttons that determines if you perfectly execute your abilities or not. A total of 4 buttons for real-time inputs that are inserted in the middle of turn-based combat. On paper, it doesn't sound like much, but in all honesty, it's the difference between making this a decent game and turning it into a generational banger. And I'm surprised that it took this long for a turn-based game to do something like this. Like I said before, it might not be unique at all, but it certainly is fresh and new. For example, there are a lot of people in the gaming community who hate turn-based games. That's not me. From the Persona franchise to Baldur's Gate 3 to XCOM, Civilization, Divinity, Fire Emblem, Pokemon, most of my favorite games of all time are turn-based. But still, I understand why turn-based games can be a turnoff for a lot of people. Whether it's because the pacing is too slow, combat gets repetitive, lack of skill expression, bloated menus and systems, or maybe people just think turn-based games are outdated. If you're someone who hates turn-based games, and everything bad I said about these games resonated with you, then I would really, really love for you to give Clair Obscur a chance. Who knows, it might just change your mind. It definitely took me some time to get used to the combat, but once I did, I was hooked immediately. I think the most important change that Clair Obscur made over your traditional turn-based game is that as the player, you're way more involved in combat than ever before. Suddenly, you're not just passively hoping that your evade stat is high enough to make the opponent's attack miss. Clair Obscur says, "Fuck that, you decide using your skills as a gamer at this moment whether or not this attack is gonna hit you." Conversely, you have to execute on the QuickTime events or else your skills won't do jack shit either. By introducing real-time combat in a turn-based game, it's suddenly not just about the raw numbers like in traditional turn-based RPGs. Am I high enough level for this? Do I have enough items or resources to fight this boss? Is my party strong or weak against this specific enemy? Of course, all of these things still matter in Clair Obscur, but what I'm saying is, by giving the player more agency to directly control our characters, and in turn the pace of the battle, there's suddenly a clutch factor that's entirely determined by player skill, whereas before you just have to pray to RNGesus and hope for a crit or a miss. Now, I decided to play this game on hard mode completely on a whim. In my experience, turn-based RPGs usually start off fairly difficult, but as the game progresses, there comes a point in the mid to late game where you find an optimal build that's completely busted, and then you just don't even have to think about strategy anymore. You just press the same few buttons and roll enemies without even trying. And that sucks, and I've always thought that that's just an unfortunate design feature of turn-based RPGs. But when I got absolutely clapped because I missed a single parry, I knew this game was built different. Clair Obscur is extremely punishing, and it really does demand your full attention when you're playing this game. You can't be distracted or doing other shit during combat because one missed dodge can turn the tide of battle. You think you're doing great one turn, and then you're getting party wiped in the next. My favorite moment playing this game was fighting this mini-boss in the first area called the Chromatic Lancelier. It's an optional boss that you can totally skip, by the way, and at least on hard mode, if you miss a single parry or dodge, you just get one shot. When you encounter him for the first time and he claps your cheeks, part of you will want to just skip him, but I guarantee this. Another side of you will tell yourself to get good, and that's what I did. To preface, I was never good at parrying. When I play games like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, I'm not gonna lie, I barely parried and I was just spam rolling the entire time. So in Clair Obscur, where parrying is very important, I died over and over and over again. I was getting Tree Sentinel flashbacks, just bashing my head against the wall and telling myself that I am not continuing this game until I beat this motherfucker. I never thought the day would come that a turn-based RPG would make me feel the same adrenaline rush of fighting a boss from a Souls-like. It's actually insane. Sure, I got clapped, but slowly but surely I would download the boss's moves in my head. Oh, it's easier to parry these attacks and I should dodge these attacks instead, things like that. There was even a run where I was so close to killing the boss, but my overconfidence and a missed parry timing got myself killed.
No! I was popping off. No.
However, during my final run, I managed to beat the boss without taking a single point of damage. I was locked the fuck in. That is what peak performance looks like. And that's when I knew this game was special. From the cool party members with their unique skills and playstyles, to all the other cool bosses I've fought so far, every single combat encounter is meaningful and challenging. Even the trash mobs are used sparingly, and they will fuck you up if you don't take them seriously. Now, obviously if you're the type of person who plays RPGs mainly for the story, then this increase in difficulty by adding real-time inputs may not be for you. My friend is playing this game on normal and he said it's fairly challenging on normal too, so definitely experiment with the story difficulty. And speaking about the story, let's talk about the overarching narrative and world building of Clair Obscur. Set in a dark epic fantasy world, the people of Lumiere experience what is called the gommage, which is French for erasing.
Omelette de fromage.
The gommage happens every year, where a mysterious figure called the Paintress paints an annually decreasing number on a large tree, and every single human with an age above that number is effectively erased. The number started with 100, and 67 years later, now we're down to 33. Firstly, I really like that the game starts with a proper prologue section and doesn't just throw you into the deep end via in medias res. It does a great job of slowly introducing our main character, Gustav, aka Robert Pattinson lookalike, and just showing us how he copes with losing Sophie, a past lover, to the Gamache. Being 32 years old, Gustav is on borrowed time, and he basically has less than a year to stop the painters from painting another number and killing more people, including himself. The game also introduces us to Expedition 33, whom Gustav is a part of, which, by the way, totally gives off Attack on Titan Scout Regiment vibes. Especially when they get massacred by Nevrons and this fly-looking old dude as soon as they touch down on the mainland.
Every contemporary story has to start with this, like, fucking Attack on Titan ass, you know, everything goes wrong immediately type premise, type setup. It's just the way things work now. I'm fine with it.
So far, what I like about Clair Obscur's world building, especially in the prologue, is that it doesn't front-load a lot of exposition, and it perfectly ties the fundamentals of the world and why it's f***ed up to this bittersweet reconnecting love story between Gustav and Sophie. And even when we start Act 1, as the player we're way more invested in the characters than the overarching plot. Gustav, who thought he was the only survivor from the beach, almost decides to quote-unquote summon his persona. But luckily, Lune, aka Best Girl, hands down, conveniently comes at the right place at the right time to save his life. I also appreciate that, despite being comrades, they have their own personal interests that create conflict between them. Lune wants to follow protocol and wait for survivors, but Gustav wants to search for Maëlle, a foster teenager he's looking after and deeply cares for. Maëlle, who I just recently found out is actually voiced by Jennifer English, the voice of Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3. And side note, it's kind of funny hearing Jennifer English voice a character that's like the polar opposite of Shadowheart, because I'm so used to Shadowheart's deadpan and sarcastic delivery that it's kind of hard to unhear at this point. But anyway, that's just a me problem.
Even if I could remember, I'm not sure I'd tell you. I don't want your ego to get overinflated.
And while we don't know much about this fantastical world that's foreign to us, that's absolutely fine because that's part of the journey that our main characters are going on an adventure for, to unlock the secrets of their world so they can stop the painters from claiming more innocent lives. Finally, I just want to add that I really appreciate that this game isn't solely inspired by the grimdark fantasy aesthetic that Dark Souls popularized, with many Souls-like games imitating it. Despite the fact that the world of Clair Obscur is pretty bleak and depressing, its environments are vibrant, colorful, and whimsical, and an absolute joy to run around in and explore. Enemies are often brightly colored, shining, and distinct to the areas that you find them in. The funny brushhead NPCs and the peaceful Nevrons are also fun to talk to and interact with, and it really makes the game feel lived in, which is a great sign of good storytelling and world building. To end this video, I'm just gonna say that this game deserves the hype. It deserves being the highest rated game of the year so far, and I'm saying all this despite only being 5 hours in. But still, the fact that I'm here and saying this much for what's supposed to be a short first impression speaks volumes to the quality that Sandfall Interactive produced. Huge props to the team over there for a great first game, and they're definitely on my radar for whatever projects they're going to work on next. I am so excited to continue playing Clair Obscur after I finish making and editing this video, and for sure I'm planning on beating this game to the end. It does help that it's only like 30 to 35 hours long on average for most playthroughs, or so I heard. So if you want to be notified when I drop my full review of Clair Obscur, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so that you're notified when it comes out. As always, I love reading and responding to your guys' comments, so please feel free to leave some down in the comment section below as well. As usual, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.